Date with a Debut is a Words and Nerds and Breathe Art Podcasts co-production recorded on Awabakal Country. And I pay my respects to all elders, past and present, and extend that to any First Nations people tuning in. Always was, always will be, Aboriginal land. On with the show. Welcome to Date with a Debut, a podcast about debut authors, their incredible books, and their journey to publication. If you are looking for a new author to discover or writing inspiration for your own story and you don't know where to start, this is the place to be. I'm Nick Wasiliev, author of When Men Cry and your host for today's show, and I'm delighted to welcome another debut author in today's episode. If you enjoy the show, or indeed any other shows on the Words and Nerds platform, jump online and give us a thumbs up, a 5-star review, wherever you are listening. Thank you for listening to us and for supporting the Australian book industry. You can also find any books mentioned in today's podcast down in the description. In today's episode, I'm joined by Susannah Begbie, a GP who has worked all over Australia. In 2006, she began a graduate diploma in professional writing at Canberra University and was awarded the editor's pick for her short story, Fly to Meet You, in the university's first anthology. However, we're here today to talk about her 2022 Richell Prize winning manuscript, The Deed, which is now published by Hachette Australia. I started off by asking Susannah about the reaction to the book and how winning the Richell Prize transformed its creation. Susannah, welcome to Date with a Debut.
Thank you for having me, Nick. It's great to be here. I'm coming to you from Ngunnawal and the Ngambri land this morning.
It's so nice to have you. And before we actually dive into The Deed, I kind of also wanted to highlight that the book has been out and about in the world and living its life at the time of recording for a little while. How does it feel to finally have it out there?
Fabulous and really strange. Both things at the same time. It's this thing that you, I guess you dream will happen, but don't really believe it for the whole time you're writing your manuscript. And now it's happened. I sort of still can't believe it. And it is fabulous. And it is strange because it's no longer mine. It belongs to whoever has it, whoever's reading it, whoever's listening. It's amazing and strange.
Wait until you like turn up in a random part of the world and you see a copy of it, like a tattered old copy that's done the rounds and done some traveling. That's a weird experience. I haven't had that experience personally, but I was in Fiji last year. And I was on an island of Tokariki, which is this really beautiful island off the west coast of Vivalivu. And I recently interviewed Naima Brown for her book, The Shot, last year for this podcast. And I brought that book with me because I just wanted to read it again, just because I really enjoyed it. And I go to the library because this hotel had a library. And what do I find? 2 copies of it.
No way.
Just in this random island in Fiji. And I sent a photo to her because she's over stateside. And I just go, there's a random island in the middle of the Pacific and there's 3 copies of your book here. And she just went, what the hell?
That's so great. That's so great. And great that it was a small place as well. Things turn up in unexpected corners. I look forward to it happening.
Absolutely. I also wanted to kind of shout out, because the book's kind of also been prevalent because of this book, this manuscript, you won the 2022 Richell Prize. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
What a vote of confidence. I literally have nothing to say, but just like, how cool is that you won something off the back of this manuscript?
Yeah, that's pretty much what I have to say about the Richell Prize. How cool was that? It was awesome. It was so much fun. Look, the Richell Prize, I don't know if you're aware, but the Richell Prize is in its 10th year this year. So, and it remembers the life of a man, Matt Richell, who was very important in the history of and the world of Hachette. So it's a great privilege to be considered for that prize, and it's an even greater privilege to win it. It was fantastic.
So with that in mind, we've talked about the crazy experience of having this book out in the world. Let's talk about it. give us your 1 minute pitch for the deed.
For the deed. So the 1 minute or less pitch is that there is a very wealthy farmer, $20 million property in the Riverina, who's dying and is really cranky, well, pretty much about everything, but particularly his kids, who've all left the farm and they're not doing what he thought they would. So he leaves the condition in his will that his kids have to build this coffin from scratch in 4 days. And if they succeed, then they inherit the $20 million property. And if they do not, they get nothing. So the 4 now adult children come home from all the parts of Australia that they're living in, and they come home to the farm to hear this will read, and the story starts from there.
Nailed it. And first up, what a killer premise. Just hearing the premise just filled me with, there is drama, there is there's family discussions, there is tension already, and we haven't even started the book.
All of that.
I love it. The first thing I kind of wanted to shout out before we dive into these characters a little bit is, and we were talking about it a little bit before we started recording, which is one thing I loved was your creation and representation of country Australia on the page, particularly the Riverina area. On a personal level, I mean, I always love seeing how country Australia is represented, having grown up there, and seeing it through the lens, especially of the context of people for living in it, in that with Tom, and kind of the space that the Riverina occupies. It's a place that is going through a lot of changes and a lot of challenges in many ways, shape, and form. But then you also have the context of these children who are returning to it and revisiting it and rediscovering this place and this space. Talk me through crafting that and presenting that on the page.
So when I started writing this novel, I had not ever written anything long. I'd written some very short pieces for a course I was doing. And then I had this idea, and the people I was writing with said that needs to be a novel. And I just said, all right, well, let's give it a crack, see what happens. Nothing to lose. No one knows what I'm doing. There's no pressure. So I actually started with a situation where, because I knew nothing, I would start the writing day with just stream of consciousness writing, and then choose a word from that or choose a phrase from that I thought might be interesting to write from. And that's how the characters kind of came to life. And I guess where the characters have come from and who they are, of course, is reflected in my own experience of the world and also who I am. So a couple of the characters come down from Sydney, and one's from St Ives, which is, of course, a very posh northern suburb. And then another one's from Newtown, and she's in a kind of student digs in Newtown. And then the other 2 come from Wagga and Albury. So they all come from these very different places. And what is integral to them coming from these places is how they got to those places in the first place. So where the novel starts, where all of those siblings are, is a reflection of the lives that they have that gradually gets revealed throughout the outplaying of the plot of the deed.
It definitely, like the presentation of this group of siblings, I think is just really where this novel comes to life for me. Not just in terms of the tension between them, but also their connection to Tom, to the father, and the expectations and the generational expectations, as well as the generational pressures that kind of have come from that. You've got David, who is kind of struggling with coming at this. He's got a business that is in significant turmoil. You've got Jenny, who I think is probably the one who is probably closest to the family and that sort of setting. But she's got some other stuff going of her own that we'll keep relatively spoiler free, but can dive into a little bit later. as alluded to, you have Chris, who is living this glamorous lifestyle. And then Sophie, who I kind of feel like is a bit of a lost soul a little bit. She's not quite sure exactly what she wants in life, and still hasn't found what that is. And not only do I love that these characters are at different places, but how each of them approaches the scenario of a parent's death is further adds to that.
Yeah.
Tell me about this motley crew. Tell me about this strange crew of siblings.
Absolutely, I will. You've just reminded me of a comment that somebody made to me. Actually, I think it was my agent, Jane Novak, when she first read it. And she said that what it gives a depiction of is the fact that for every child, the parent is a different person. So the youngest of the siblings, Sophie, for her, Tom Edwards, her father, is a completely different person to the person that Dave experiences as his father. So that's part of their coming together as well. And because they're coming back to the family farm, they're facing things again through the lens of their own experience of childhood and adolescence, and their experience of the landscape that they're in, and their experience of the expectations that Tom Edwards had for and of them from when they were very small. So there's a lot of stuff that each of them has to face up to, and it's different for each of them as well.
How hard was that? The feeling that I really liked was that I got the sense that you had sat down with all of these characters. You'd had that dialogue with them. You'd had those conversations with them, because all of them feel very lived in and very. It's not just a case of a character that complements a main character, or someone who is kind of deliberately put in the background for a creative purpose. All of these different siblings come at this situation extremely differently, and I just thought just seeing the contrast. This is me speaking as purely in the author headspace now. Just extremely complimentary it felt very well thought out. Just seeing where all of these characters were and why that dictated how they reacted the way they did.
Yeah. It's again, I guess everyone does this writing differently, and I will probably do it differently for further writing than I have for so far. But each of the characters started off with like that kind of stream of consciousness stuff, and like I might find a spot where there's a suburban house with, that someone might rent, and then I think, actually that's the sort of place that Jenny might live, and then from the beginning, so I did develop each of the characters themselves. So I did a lot of kind of just, again, stream of consciousness off the top of my head writing to see what felt right for each character. So I might start with Jenny, and I call it writing into Jenny. So I kind of write into her. And you will know this, Nick, from writing, when it's become when it's no longer real, when it's insincere, when it's not her, it's something that you're just thinking in your mind as an author. But then the consequences of how they meet each other and what they do there is all about asking the question, why would you do that? And what effect will that have on your siblings? So why would you come back from Sydney and just be the one who really wants to organise everything for everyone, which is Christine? And why would you be that person? What in your childhood and your upbringing has led you to be that person? And now you are that person who's going to come down from St Ives and just get everything sorted out. Now you are that person. What effect is that going to have on your siblings? And why are they responding that way? So that kind of question of what has led to this behaviour, and what is this behaviour doing for other people and for yourself? That's kind of the basis of how I went from that very beginning stage where I really didn't know what I was writing, that kind of became the way I wrote. Why would you do that? That's a really strange thing to do. What were you thinking? That's a terrible thing to do. What were you thinking? And that's kind of how it started, actually, with the idea to begin with of this cranky farmer who does this kind of bitter joke in his will about the coffin. When that occurred to me, it made me laugh, and I thought, which is, potentially a bit dark, that humour, but it did make me laugh, and I thought, what kind of a man would do that to his kids? Where does that come from? And that's where it starts.
Well, look, luckily for you, I'm an absolute sucker for black humour, so I kind of seeing that the moment I didn't even need to like get the full context of just hearing that he wanted them to build his coffin. As a elderly gentleman who lived on the land and lived in country New South Wales, that told me everything I needed to know, particularly in the context of expectations placed on children. I actually do want to shout out two other particular characters in this, which is of course the father, Tom, who's lived in the country as a farmer, and he is cranky. He's coming to terms with the fact that he's going to die. He's filled with a lot of regrets, and makes this stunning, frankly, decision about his property and his financial legacy, and also this lawyer character, Vince. I don't want to say like sleazy or a wee bit dodgy.
He's just shonky.
Like he obviously definitely wants them to fail, given the financial stakes at play. Just unbelievable, frankly. These two characters, I loved them. They were just sitting in the background of this sibling dynamic. You always felt Vince, both the pressure of Vince in terms of the stakes, given that should they fail with this endeavor, all of that financial legacy transfers over.
Right.
But also,
that's probably worth even just mentioning a bit, because Vince is not the family lawyer. So they have a family lawyer, which is Mindel, Caesar and Sloane, and they've looked after the Edwards family for 5 generations. So, and Tom chose to go with a local, like backwoods lawyer to write this will where with the coffin, and part of that will is that if the kids fail, Vince, the lawyer, inherits. So
that's right. And sneaky, but also not only the pressure of Vince, but the whole reason why Vince is there in the first place is due to Tom and all of the pressures and the feelings that you get from Tom, and how his decisions, even though he's no longer there, permeate across not just the children with this scenario that they find themselves in, but how it has shaped them into who they are as people. It's very much as, of course, the story is about these 4 children and that dynamic. It also is a bit of a legacy of Tom.
Yes.
Himself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And that's part of him being the patriarch in this farming and small town community. So that's an enormously powerful and respected position Tom is in. He has this big property that's, as we've said, worth $20 million-ish. And he's respected by everyone. So I guess his experience of the world is that he is a powerful person. So it's not said anywhere in the novel, but it's clear that he has agency over his life, over the property and the land that he's in, which he loves very much, to be clear as well. He's in this situation where he was born into, he has lived on, and he has had generations of family farming on this land that he loves. And he cannot believe that he has 4 children and none of them have been part of that or have had that experience. So So yes, absolutely, he's the cause of many things, including Vince's experience of being in this small town Coorong, the nearby town, um, and also there is a reason for it, which is this massively strong connection to his land and to his ideas of what family should be and what family in the previous generations has been. Yeah, so the truth is, Nick, I actually kind of love them all by now. Like once you've written, I don't know if you've had this when you'd written your first book, you just get to the end of it and you kind of think, oh, good on you guys. You've worked really hard to get here. You're great.
Yeah, there is. You do feel a sense of pride in these people when you have the actual chance to meet them face to face.
Yeah,
but it's the one of the great things about writing is that it gives you the ability, the empathy, and that you can pull from it is incredible. I understand why you do what you do. Which is such a valuable life skill to have in general, and doing it even with these fictional characters. I'm not surprised that you reacted that particular way, and that whole thing of Tom with kind of having the expectation is something that I think a lot of country kids who have moved away would be all too familiar with, that sort of feeling of pressure. And not only that is a key theme of the book, but there's the theme of death, of saying goodbye to parents, how inheritance and the pressure of inheritance transforms family dynamics and relationships, and also the values that emerge when you are laying someone to rest. Between these kids, there is deep love, a chance for understanding, coming together for purpose, and trying to close off a significant collective experience that they've all had, no matter how the setting is different. But it's also volatile. It is ugly on several occasions. It is challenging and emotionally draining. Out of curiosity, has writing this book and presenting this scenario changed your perspective on the experience because this is something that we're all going to have to deal with at some point in our lives, saying goodbye to our parents. It's a part of the life and that process, whether it be on a property or whether it be, you're in the city and, all you have to deal with is a house. How has that book, what's the book taught you?
Gosh, I sort of feel like what hasn't it taught me? Because this kind of experience, I guess, of exploring death and inheritance and family through the lens of 4 completely different characters, and in fact 5 if you include Tom in that family. And then seeing this event through the eyes of 4 different people. I was just thinking earlier, Nick, when you were saying about we all get to really love our characters. I wonder if writing, especially character-based writing, has an inherent result of making the writer more empathetic. If that they, as a person, say, all right, I'm not the only person here. I'm not the only one who will have this response. So I don't know. I was just wondering that when you said it, if empathy is part of the experience of writing about other people. What do you think?
It probably is. I would say so. Whenever one of the best pieces of advice that I'd ever heard about writing, or quotes about writing, had come from Margaret Atwood. I've alluded to it a few times on this whenever, like, at interval random moments on this show. And she said the main rule of writing is hold my attention. So at the core of it, we're telling a story, we're being creative, and I'm talking about the fictional side of things. Of course, non-fiction, there's another element to that, but that's kind of the key fundamental goal. And holding your attention, I think, that says enough in that you have to be able to communicate and provide that empathy and that feeling when crafting a piece of art like a book. So and any sort of art it aims to try and broaden and expand our experiences and our enjoyments and our feelings and our emotions. I think it's like probably a similar comparison would be music for me in terms of the feelings that it generates. But I think an empathetic feeling and empathetic understanding is something I think unique to books, because it presents a world and allows your mind to explore that world. And often the reader does a lot of the storytelling themselves, just from the small little prompts that you give them, from holding their attention. So I'd say yes. I'd say that probably right there, the core of it, that if empathy is one of the key things that comes out of the writing process, I think it's one of the best means of doing so.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's also, as we're saying, I think there is also a like a privileged perspective of being able to be part of these characters' lives with a level of non-attachment, so that I don't have to get locked into and triggered by the arguments that Christine and Dave have in the novel. That doesn't happen, and it's not necessary. So that maybe that's part of the empathy, actually, is that as the writer you can experience those people and their relationships without having that kind of attachment to it that makes it very hard to have any perspective. So maybe the combination of empathy and non-attachment is part of how we can do it and what we learn from writing.
Absolutely. And not only that, you can also, I mean, some of the best lessons I've ever learnt have probably come from writers who have had the chance to sit down and examine topics and examine tough subject matter with honesty and grace. And it can be an educational tool. So even if you may have a non-attachment and you have no connection to it, it can be something that can also be a positive drive forward. Even like, no, I don't want to be like that. I don't want to behave and act like that in that particular scenario or situation.
Exactly. That has not worked out well for that character.
I can honestly, I really do want to keep chatting about this book, but I also kind of want to ask, because about, we alluded to it earlier, about the fact that this particular manuscript won the Richell Prize.
Yes.
And it's not very often I get the chance to speak with someone whose manuscript has gone on to win a significant prize and then has gone on to have it published. So in this section of the podcast, I always like to ask about your actual journey to publication.
Yeah.
I feel compelled to, in this particular instance, given that you won this prize with this manuscript. How did that influence it actually then being translated into the final book that we have in our hands now? And what did that do in terms of opening up opportunities? What did that do for you?
Yeah. So I'd been writing this novel for a long time before I entered the Richell Prize, so 10 plus years. And then when I entered the Richell Prize, it was among entering a whole stack of prizes, which you will know that when you get your novel out there, you just send it wherever you can. And that process from long listing, shortlisting, and winning the Richell Prize was just amazing. It was just so amazing and so beyond what I thought might happen. And so I'm super grateful to the people who put on the Richell Prize in the first place. Because they put on the Richell Prize, which 100% changed my I don't know, the potential outcomes of my writing. There is no question of that. But also because the Richell Prize is put on by Hachette, who is a publishing firm for whom Matt Richell worked and did fantastic stuff. And after they'd read the full manuscript, so the Richell Prize has, you enter 3 chapters of your book. And so then I think it's not until after I won the Richell Prize that they read the whole book. And so having a publisher read your whole book is an amazing thing. And then because they knew about my book because of the Richell Prize, and then they read the book, and then Hachette gave me a contract, or they offered a contract at the end of that same year, which was 2022, which ended up being a 2-book contract. So incredible, just incredible from beginning to end. So I guess the moral to that story is that manuscript prizes really count. You know, they are really worth entering. And also, what a fantastic contribution to the writing community that a publisher makes when they put on a manuscript prize. It's a big deal that the resources. I cannot imagine the resources involved in reading hundreds of submissions. Just the kind of volume of work involved is amazing. So, yeah, it's been awesome.
What advice would you give to someone who probably is listening to this podcast and is trying to submit their books and manuscripts? I mean, this was a 10-year plus passion project for you, so that is a lot of commitment, and a lot of people would get that. Things, and it's great that it has worked out well for you. What sort of advice would you give to someone who was probably you 2 years ago?
Yeah. So I guess a couple of things spring to mind. One of them is something I did a few years before applying for the Richell Prize or submitting to the Richell Prize. And that is that I got a freelance editor to read my book and edit it. And that completely changed my manuscript. I basically rewrote it after having that editing done. And so that's the number one thing. Number two thing is that every single one of these prizes or agents or whoever you're applying for or submitting to, every single one of them has different criteria. So you cannot write one synopsis that's one size fits all, because everyone has different word counts, extra documents, and maybe the first 3 chapters, or maybe they want the whole manuscript, or maybe they just only want the synopsis. And so I guess that would be my second thing, is to say take it seriously for everything you submit to. Take it seriously, and every part of it, take it seriously. What's the title of your work? What's your synopsis? Is it the right word count? And does it actually say? Synopses are hell. They're a nightmare. I hate writing them. I really do. In fact, for what it's worth, my title was hell as well. That was months in the making. I just could not find a title I liked. So the synopses are super important. And so I guess I would say about them, like the original manuscript, get someone to look at your synopsis. And if it's someone with editing experience, all the better. Get someone to read your bio and say, yeah, that sounds like you're an idiot. Or, yeah, no, you sound quite normal there. That's good. You sound like a normal human. We think that's a good outcome.
That's the best advice ever. I love it.
Yeah. And also to not stop. So I made it my job for 3 months just to sit down and submit. That was it. I just said, that's what I'm doing for 3 months. So, give it time and keep submitting to everything.
That's a great advice. I love that. Really brilliant. I heard you mentioned it a little earlier that it was a 2-book contract.
No.
What is next?
That's a really good question, Nick, and I'd love to answer it. And I'll go with what is next is going to be another book, probably a novel, because that's the contract. So, I think we're definitely going to have another novel. That's the outcome. I've been doing a lot of writing, and I've written some stuff that I really like and some stuff that I'm unsure of. And I've got a protagonist who I'm generally fond of. So I guess that's where we're at the moment.
We like them. They're okay. We think they're okay. You can spend some time with this person.
That's right.
I love it. I love the not a clue. I like that's what I'm excited about when you're kind of in that rudimentary stage. You're like, I don't know what the hell this is going to look like, but that's kind of that's where the gold comes out. I reckon that's those kind of key moments.
Well, that is true, Nick. I think that's true. You've got to kind of live in that uncertainty to to be able to write the next thing. You know, you have to just say, all right, well, this is a gig. It's really it's an uncertain activity, writing. Anything could happen. It's great.
Neil Gaiman has an amazing quote, which is, this is how you do it. You sit down and you type out every single word until it is done. It is that easy and that hard.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah, that is absolutely right. Yeah. Yeah. That's true.
We'll finish off. I usually like to finish off these podcasts with a rapid fire question part of the show, where I just fling a bunch of questions at you and you give me the first answer that comes to your head.
Uh-huh.
So we will do that now. I know I've given you preparation for the first two particular questions, which is in regards to books. First up, what is your favorite book that you have read in the last 12 months?
I almost don't read when I'm writing, which means I've got a massive gap in my reading life. But I will say that a bit over 12 months ago, I read The Cat's Table by Michael Ondaatje, and it is a superb book. It is just superb. And more recently, in just, you know, the last 6 months or so, I've been reading more recent authors. I've really enjoyed Lost and Found by Brooke Davis, which is now about 10 years old. And then of the closer to home still in Canberra, I've just read Sidelines by Karen Viggers, and that's fantastic. It's a very interesting look at kids and adolescent sport, team sport, and their parents and what their parents do. It's good. It's really interesting.
Is there a good little writing circle in Canberra? Because I've noticed a couple of authors are coming out of there now, quite a lot of well-published ones.
Yeah, Canberra's a lovely community. I am only recently becoming part of the writing community because, as you know, I've only published this book 2 weeks ago. But people are pretty down to earth in Canberra, you know, and they're pretty happy to help each other out and to be part of each other's writing journey. It's a lovely town for that.
It is. What is your favourite debut novel that you've ever read? So I'm talking across your whole life. Ever.
Yeah, okay. Housekeeping, Marilyn Robinson. She's an American writer. She'd now be in her late 70s, maybe early 80s. She wrote this book, Housekeeping, her debut novel, and I think it won the Orange Prize for, she's American. And then she wrote her second novel, was published 23 years later. And I think it won the Pulitzer Prize or something similar to that. I can't remember the prizes. She is superb. She is her words, her sentences. You just want to sink into her books. Stay there for as long as you can.
The two reactions I usually have is, oh my God, this book is so good. But then the writer in me kicks in and goes, oh my God, I am never going to be this good.
Oh, totally. And you know what, Nick, that is only just, I mean, that has occurred worse now than ever before, now that my book is actually out there and it's possible somebody will compare it to another book.
I know. Oh, God. It's just, it's the writer egos do exist. And usually it only kicks in when we read something that we can legitimately go, oh my God, that's excellent. That's so good. And no way are we ever going to be that good. Do you have a favorite word?
True. Sorry, Nick, that is actually true. There is no way I will ever be as good as Marilyn Robinson. And maybe that's key for a writer reading, is that we just have to detach ourselves from the possibility that we will be that good. I'm never going to be as good as Marilyn Robinson. Sorry to all the readers. My book is still really good. It's called The Key. Very entertaining. It'll make you laugh, probably make you cry. Did it make you cry, Nick?
It did. It did actually make me cry.
Making blokes cry, which I guess is a bit topical for you, who've written a book called When Men Cry. But I love that men cry reading it. It's great. All right, back to you. Yeah. Rapid fire. No. Got that.
You can take over. It's cool. Do you have a favourite word?
I don't know. I have a word that I say too often. I don't think it's because it's my favourite. The word that I write too often in my book is pretty. It's a pretty good day. It's been a pretty bad week. It's pretty nice. So that's I feel like I shouldn't have mentioned that because now people will look at it and realise. Never mind.
Well, it's
Favourite word.
something. You can favourite word, any sort of word.
Yeah, so favourite words, I generally go towards words that begin with S, which I'm told happens for people going with their first letter of their name. That can happen. What's your favourite word?
I've kind of been jumping back and forth between a couple. Succulent has been a very favourite of mine.
I should have chosen that. It begins with S.
Oh, well, I mean,
my word now.
Yeah, sure, you can have it. That's fine. You can have that. I need a new one anyway, so I've been meaning to go and hunt for a new word. So I also like adventure. I don't know what it is. Yeah. Adventure has been growing on me a little while, not just because of the different phases to say it, but often when I've been saying to, like, I take my dog for a walk and I say, do you want to go on an adventure? And then it kind of evokes that, I don't know, Lord of the Rings Tolkien-esque feeling of just joy when you go somewhere.
It really does. How about eclipse? That's one of my favourites.
Oh, that's a good word.
Yeah, it's nice.
Feels like there's not just like you think of the moon and you think of other sorts of kind of stuff that you can connect to that. That's nice. I like that. Is there a book or a story set in country Australia that you think more people should read?
Again, I'm going back, but I think Miles Franklin, My Brilliant Career, is one of the best books that I have read. And going back again, not as far as Miles Franklin, but a great book is Darcy Nyland's The Shirley. I really love that. And then coming a little bit more to the present, there are a lot of writers who just do place really well. Tim Winton does.
Yeah.
Who does. There are so many who do that. And I'd not recognise that place would be something that I would write about. So I just wrote it on a farm because that's kind of where I'm from. But place is really important. And I think that I'm really happy that people are enjoying the landscape of the deed.
Absolutely, yeah. It's again one of the things that drew me to the book, just the evocative nature of it and the setting of space. I am assuming you don't want a coffin to be built for your death. So what would you like to happen to you?
I'm never going to die, Nick. That's the good news. That's never happening for me. All right. But just on the off chance I do, I reckon just that getting wrapped in a cotton thing or a cardboard coffin, any of those, wouldn't mind being cremated. I say that as someone who realises I wouldn't be aware of it as well. They're all good by me. I tell you what I don't dig is the coffins that cost just thousands of dollars and precious metals and lining and lacquered surfaces. I just don't really get what that's about. That makes no sense.
Let's get that out of here. There's a new thing that's going, and I know it's probably quite expensive and I couldn't be able to afford it yet, but this is probably more the farmer, the country boy in me talking. Whenever we lost like a chicken or a dog, we would plant a tree and plant them under the tree so they would feed the tree. You can get a situation now where you can have a tree planted for someone who has died, and it's like they're put around the tree. So I would have that. I would like to just know that what I got left here is helping a tree grow or something else growing. That's what I want.
Yeah, that's lovely.
Yeah,
I like it. I might want that too. Now that you've mentioned it, that sounds.
You can have it. Let's do it. And final question. Where is one place in country Australia that you think is underrated and that everyone should visit?
Oh, so many. I've just done a job in Benalla, done a locum in Benalla, and Benalla's superb. I loved that. And then before that, I did a job in Swan Hill, and Swan Hill has the best big thing that I've seen anywhere. Like the big banana and the big whatever. They've got the Great Murray cod. It's
Yes.
It's really big. It's so great. And then I think if you go, I just think if you're in a town for more than a couple of nights, even you get curious. Like Benalla has this thing. How great is this? Benalla has this annual street art festival to which they invite street artists from around the world. So they just have these massive murals of all kinds just around the town. It's a little country town. How great is that?
It'd be so much fun, and like it adds so much to the town and to the people, and I reckon people would appreciate it, and it smashes the idea of a stereotype of a country town. Also, I think that every time, the more I go traveling all around Australia, the more I realise there is no such thing as a stereotypical country town, because there's always something interesting, and there's always something going on, and there's always something unique to that town that you can appreciate. I love that it's got its big thing is the Big Murray cod. My claim to fame, I think the town that I was closest to is Robertson, and we have the big potato, and I think it's big. I think it's the worst big thing ever because it just looks like
I've seen that. You can't. I've seen it, and you can't really even tell it's a big thing. Like it doesn't. It's not massive. It's not whereas the big merino in Goulburn, now that is a prize. That is
I reckon they're a contender. Yeah, they're a contender for the best big thing.
Yeah.
I could honestly chat all day. I really could. Unfortunately, we have run out of time. And so thank you so much, Susannah. It has been a real pleasure chatting with you. And to everyone listening, get yourself a copy of The Deed. It is an extremely good book. You will laugh, you will cry. It'll be everything.
Thanks, Nick. Thank you. Lovely to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Date with a Debut, and for listening to the Words and Nerds channel. You can buy all books mentioned in today's episode down in the description box, and if you enjoyed the show, or indeed any episode of Words and Nerds, drop us a review, leave us 5 stars or a thumbs up. It is hugely appreciated. Catch you soon.
Yay, nailed it.
Let's do it again. That was fun.
Oh, shucks.